What's up, Star Wars fans? We're back for another week of Three Simple Men making their way through the galaxy. Today, we continue our journey and path through Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, where we left off Anakin leaving for Tatooine, about premonitions about his mother. Guys, how are we?
Pretty good. How about you?
So, let's just get into it. Where we left off last time is pretty much you saw. Actually, no. I'm sorry. I'm wrong. Where we ended off was probably one of the best scenes we've seen so far. Is Obi-Wan fighting Jango Fett, trying to capture him.
Yeah, definitely. I think the most action we've gotten so far. Obviously, during this at least our journey through this film. But so that was fun, and I think we discussed that a little bit. We pretty much talked about the battle last go around, but yeah, with here we land on Tatooine, and I mean right off the bat, with the Tatooine landing, right? It is Tatooine, right? Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Sorry. Yep. So we start off on Tatooine. We get one a familiar little spaceport that they land in. I noticed. So I feel like we see that at some later dates in some other series. But we get Watto.
Yes.
So an older Watto.
A Watto who hasn't truly recovered in a way where once he lost Anakin, it was hard for him to fix droids, how to maintain his shot, because Anakin was so skilled in it, and you see Watto just doing what he can.
Was anyone surprised that Anakin didn't get more aggressive with Watto? I mean, you could tell he was angry, and we know further on in this episode that we kind of see a bit of a plummet to the dark side for Anakin. I was really, he's there looking for his mother. He's confronting the guy that owned him as a slave, and then finds out that he sold his mother. I was half expecting, the entire time, the tension during that. I was expecting a force choke, or even just not even the force, even just hands. I was expecting kind of some sort of more threatening thing. But we don't get that yet. We don't get
the only thing we get
ridden
is the way he said it at the end. Is asking where is he, and his tone started to get a little aggressive. Not to a point where it's just going dark side, but it's more of he's losing patience.
Yeah.
Because he's still young as a Jedi, and he has impatience, and he's just and this is what we talked about in the previous episodes during episode 1, because his love for his mother has become a issue for the Jedi. So it's really gonna be very hard for him to let go of that love, and you can tell he's just this is what I'm here for. This is who I want to see. Either you tell me where she is, or we're gonna have issues.
We also get I'm gonna call him the pedicab or the rickshaw droid on Tatooine, the guy running with Padme and Anakin riding in the back, which was fun. And again, I know we get to see that version of a droid again in future episodes, but yeah, I kind of didn't even really remember that this was the first time we see it chronologically, and also just so happens in the order I believe that the show is that things were released. This is also the first time we see that droid, so I thought that was interesting. Then I think, do we hop to the next scene? Is Slave 1 in action?
Yep.
That was fun.
That was by far one of the most very exhilarating space battles we've seen so far in our journey. It's we are dealing with a new planet that is Geonosis,
Yep.
and we're seeing its outer rim being completely covered and protected through an asteroid field. And we're seeing Slave One, a fire spray ship, being pursued by a Jedi fighter. And then what we see after this between Jango and Obi-Wan and their flying skills is just mesmerizing, to say the least, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they're like, oh my God, Obi-Wan survived the attack. He placed a tracking beacon on our ship. And, first it starts off with the seismic charges, which is one of the most popular weapons and probably one of the best sound effects in Star Wars.
Yeah.
With the way it just goes, you hear that sound, you just get that moment of silence, and then boom, just
Still get excited about that sound. That's just like, if you ever want to make a dude happy, just like, what's a good sound to make someone happy? The Star Wars fan, boom. The seismic charges, man, they are just.
So I actually was looking into this more just to see how that sound effect came, and that's actually going to be a little bit my deep dive. So
Let's do it.
All
uh,
right, why
Dive
not?
right in.
just trying to I actually found like a couple Q&As with Ben Burtt and Matt Wood, who are like the audio guys of Star Wars, and I guess he wanted to do something of that effect back in like episode 4 with the way ships explode in space. But what they wanted to do was to have this audio black hole so that the sound would be unable to escape at the time of ignition, but then released a moment later. So, it's just, again, he wasn't able to do it in episode 4, but with the way the advancements of technology and just all the different sound effects that they have at Skywalker Sound, they were able to make it off, and they're like, you know what, let's just have nothing go on. And they thought that this was like a mistake with the audio, with the way it just, you hear that initial pop, and then there's like that moment of silence, and then the boom. They thought that was an audio error. It's like, nope, that's how they wanted it to be. So I thought that was pretty cool with the way they wanted to get that concept.
You
That's
know
Um,
what?
awesome.
You know what I'm thinking about it? It's more of like when I see it, how it's slightly quiet before it blows off. It
mhm,
it's a reminiscent of a time during the Second World War, during the naval battles during the Atlantic, especially with uh U-boats, and they drop
mhm,
seismic detonations to try to sink the U-boats to, or at least bring them up to shore or above water to try to sink them. That's what I think it was. It was pretty much like trying a way to
mhm.
bring him out in a way where he can just keep pursuing and firing upon him, because we saw that fire spray ship, Django's ship, just keep shooting and shooting. Maybe that's why it's called a fire spray, because it was just boom, 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 just shooting everything at him at once. But no, it's like that's what I thought about in my mind. It was pretty much like that was a reminiscence towards a time during the Second World War of a tactic they used during the Navy.
Mhm. Yeah, so you had like 2 or 3 sets of seismic charges going around. They just see like the different flying styles, and then once both Django and Obi-Wan navigate through an asteroid, then we see Django laying fire on Obi-Wan and has one of his quotes of "Blast, this is why I hate flying." And yeah, you just definitely see a different flying styles when you compare an Obi-Wan to an Anakin. I mean, Obi-Wan was a decent pilot, but he wasn't really like the risk taker that Anakin was, especially during that chase in Coruscant in an earlier episode that we talked about.
Very true. Um, so with that, we get a little more of a look at. Do we maybe get another cutscene back to Tatooine? Either way, we can at least land on Geonosis. So we do get Obi-Wan kind of coming in, seeing that there is in fact a large concentration of Trade Federation ships on Geonosis, and then he uh, proceeds to disembark his ship and do a little spying or investigation. And this might be out of order, but I think this is good to just kind of touch on this part. we do get, and you know how I like to have the subtitles on, we get the reveal of a character who chronologically we know is Count Dooku, because we've been watching this chronologically, but even the subtitles referred to him as Guy One. They don't refer to him as Count Dooku during that whole exchange. Everyone else is called by their names, but it's still supposed to be like, who is this? And all we hear is at one point somebody refers to him as Count. That's it. We still don't hear that he's Dooku. So that reveal doesn't happen yet if you've watched this in release order. But we do get the reveal also, and I wrote it down. It might not be the quote I really want to dwell on, but we do get from the Trade Federation. I'm not signing your treaty until I have her head on my desk, and we learn that basically they sent this bounty hunter to kill Padme just because the Viceroy refuses to go along with the plan because he's still a little upset that he got bested by Padme. So it just seems like he has a grudge.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
he decided, which is funny.
Padme when she was the queen, she was like what, 14, 15? So it's like if you're like, I think any of us can attest to this. If you got bested by a younger person, way younger than you, you'd have a grudge.
So I just find it very interesting that if he got over that grudge and they didn't have to send a bounty hunter to kill Padme, things might have turned out quite differently for the separatists, because nobody would have found out their plan. They would have had more time to do things, right? Because the only reason all of this is happening is because of a botched assassination attempt. And if he just said, okay, I'll sign the treaty and do what we're going to do, maybe they would have had bigger weapons and bigger things that we know are coming ahead of time before, full on war breaks out.
Oh, I see where
right?
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Oh, man.
And
but
then I guess with the whole maybe creation of the clone army, that would have been a different discussion. But one of the things I'll just say to your earlier comment about the Federation core ships, this is the first time we've seen those core ships on the ground. Like we are more used to seeing them up in space, or they're attached to it. So yeah, that was quite the change up from what we saw in episode 1 with the Federation ships. And then to your point, Ryan, now we're getting into starting to see the separatists with the Trade Federation. Then we see some other players involved, such as the Commerce Guild, the Corporate Alliance, and the Techno Union. And you're starting to see a preliminary separatist council.
Don't forget the banking plan too, man, because that's going to be a huge thing later down.
Yeah, so we're starting to see the preliminary separatist council or preliminary leadership with Count Dooku at the helm, or as we want to say, Guy One.
With the Trade Federation, like you said, Ryan, with the how he says he won't sign a treaty until he has Senator Amidala's head on his desk, because my last hot take about them was they're already in deep with Darth Sidious, about, to wait to shape the galaxy or the way things are going to be going. So he knows he's failed, but he's not going to just give up and just hide. He's going to double down and just continue. And he finds a new ally into the count. He finds the trade, the Techno Union, the Commerce Guild, the banking clan, all allies with a similar interest. So he doesn't feel completely overwhelmed or scared, where he knows he's in a collective agreement where they're going to achieve the same pretty much goal. They're going to focus on one thing, and it's what they all want is pretty much away from the bureaucracy, the Republic.
So then with that, we pop back on over to Tatooine, and now for the first time chronologically, we are just outside of Mos Eisley. And we get introduced to first we get introduced to a young Owen Lars and Beru Lars. And then of course we meet Klieg, Lars. So anything before we go into what happens after, just about the Lars families? I got a little something, but I figured I'd let you guys go first.
Well,
I
then we
really
see
have.
the return of another character, C3PO. This time,
Fully clothed.
yeah, and you can tell he was very, he recognized Anakin very easily, compared to Watto when they first stopped by. So 3PO was like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy to see you," and he recognized Padme right away. So he was very excited and couldn't wait to introduce them to his new family.
And to Tom's point, an earlier episode, he does refer to him as the Maker yet again, which I never really picked up on. Which always funny that in future renditions we'll hear, bless the Maker. I will say, or take a little aside here, and I guess this is a little page out of Mike's book with a deep dive, but the something I found out way later after watching this, probably within the past year, the actress who plays Beru, Lars, went on after this to join a pretty ruthlessly insane cult. And this is weird, but so she joined a cult called Nexium, and there's a fantastic documentary series out on HBO called The Vow, where she gets away from the cult. So it's a happy story for her. And she actually manages, and like the whole show almost revived. And it's like, she's like, yeah, it's so weird. Like I was in Star Wars, but like ended up getting sucked into a cult. Somebody else, the person who was one of the leaders of the cult was, if you ever watched the show Smallville, was Alison Mack, who played Chloe Sullivan in Smallville.
Wait,
Was like the leader, so she managed to pull in like other actresses and stuff. But I won't go into the details of what the cult did. It's not good, and Alison Mack's in prison for it all now. But the documentary is spectacular, and weirdly enough connected to Star Wars because of this, and lot of love for the actress, because she did manage to obviously get out of a terrible situation, and not just that, but go on to end up kind of being a hero herself and helping other people get out of the cult. So kind of cool. Just wanted
note
to
to self, kids: don't drink the Kool-Aid.
and that's exactly kind of what happens. And if you watch again, The Vow, if you're into documentary stuff. So yeah, that's the little aside there. But then our next I guess our next big scene is Anakin going to find his mom.
Mm-hmm.
And
one of the things I thought
so,
was in that discussion, or right before Padme, right before Padme comes out of the homestead, the shadow of Anakin at times reminded me of Darth Vader. And
Yes.
I was
it's been
about to say
like
that,
an
Mike.
hour
I was about
14,
to say
like
that.
10 seconds. Like you just see like the shadow like going into the corner, and I just see like the helmet, and just like, wow, they really did some nice foreshadowing there with the whole, and just like, or just that entire scene. You just see like that Vader
Not
resemblance.
just metaphorically, but literally as well, because what
Foreshadowing.
he's about to do is to start what we know is his path towards where it's going to end up.
Oh, I want to take one step back, and I'm sorry I skipped over this, but I just looked at my notes. When they first land at the Lars residence, they're like pretty far away from the ship when Padme turns to R2-D2 and says, "R2, stay with the ship." Like what? I just kind of felt bad for R2. I'm like, you let him get like halfway away from the ship before you realized he was there with you, and you wanted him to, like, he had to go all the way back. I don't know. I noticed that this time, and I was like, did we have to have an R2 stay with the ship moment? It seemed like a kind of a weird scene. And then I was like, you made him get all the way down the ramp, all the way out, and now you're sending him back to the ship. I thought that.
Can we just say this? This is the first time we're going to hear that quote, that line completely. R2 stay with the ship, because we're going to hear it later down the road.
It does get said a lot, so that was probably a reference. You're right. Also, we do get Klieg has a pretty cool hover wheelchair that I want to, also
Yeah.
mention.
Yeah.
That it's kind of cool. But yes, so the really cool foreshadowing, and then we go to a part that actually got a little confusing because now I'm realizing that I did jump ahead because we then get the shot of Obi-Wan. Well, first we get the shot of Anakin going on a speeder
Yeah.
through Tatooine, looking very angry.
And it's the first time we
worried.
saw a sandcrawler too with the Jawas.
Yep, we do get the Sandcrawler discussion with him, and he's out on his mission. But then it cuts in it, and that's when we get Obi-Wan back
It's
on.
also Duel of the Fates vibes too, as he's going through the desert too. A throwback. To
Very
episode
true,
one.
Mike. Very true.
You have that along the way, but keep going.
But yeah, so then we do get the cutscene to Geonosis with Obi-Wan, and at first I was like, "Is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's Anakin now going," and I'm like, "Oh no, it's actually Obi-Wan going into and seeing the droid army being built, and then eavesdropping."
I love the fact that Obi-Wan just pretty much is a hypocrite in a sense where he tells he worries about Anakin when he's not on Naboo anymore, and he hopes he's okay. And the next thing you know, he finds out he's on Tatooine. He just gets all mad about it.
But yeah, so then we get Anakin rolling up on the Sand People's camp and sneaking in to find his dying mother. What everyone think of the death scene?
It was very, in a way, emotional because it was hard to watch how Anakin found his mother and she tried to muster the strength to say, I love you.
But yeah, no, I mean, to your point, yeah, it's just very hard. And it just also, especially for Anakin, who hasn't seen her in 10 years and just he only sees her through his nightmares too. So that really had that was a very tough moment for Anakin to find his mother like that, and for her to, like you said, to barely have the strength to say I love you and die.
Yeah.
Something about Star Wars characters in the movies, how it's very difficult to say I love you. Well, some people can say it, some people won't respond it to a way, but talking about
we know, Tom.
Yeah, we're ahead of ourselves. But no, but going to Shmi Skywalker, I believe once we get into later after Attack of the Clones, there's going to be a topic about her, and with a certain character involved that happens to be the Count, about how this happened. There is like a little backstory towards it, but we won't talk about it now. Once we get into the Clone Wars, I'll discuss it more.
Okay. I will say kind of moving on, we then get the well, obviously we get the next moment where Anakin decides to kill everyone. Right? It's the slaughter of the Sand People. And then we get this possibly my favorite scene actually. I think in this sequence and maybe even in the movie where we get Yoda sitting back on Coruscant, and we finally see that he's really using the Force because he's sensing. Well, we hear Qui-Gon's voice, saying Anakin, no, and then we get Mace Windu walking in, and Yoda says, young Skywalker is in pain, terrible pain. And I want to talk about that a little bit because
just before
physically,
I just want to say this.
Oh yeah,
you're right about Qui-Gon. You can hear Qui-Gon's voice, but we do hear a heavy breathing as well.
Yeah, it seemed like and I wasn't sure who yelled no.
Maybe it's him in a sense.
It sounded like it sounded different than Qui-Gon's voice. We hear a
Yeah,
no,
No,
which
we've heard Qui-Gon saying Anakin, Anakin, but who says no is maybe it's the light side in Anakin. Who knows?
maybe. And again, we're watching chronologically, so I don't want to skip ahead, but there is another pretty iconic no that gets yelled out at a later date. That I don't know if in a different film. But I will say the thing I kind of wanted to maybe try to open up a little discussion. Young Skywalker is in pain, terrible pain. He's not in any physical pain, so obviously he's in the emotional pain because his mother died, but I don't think that's what he's sensing. He's sensing the pain that I'm going to say and kind of bring up that people think all right, so I guess we know some coming to the dark side, and we know it from maybe some of the games and some other things can kind of change the person and how they look. Right? They kind of get a little. So I guess my question is turning to the dark side physically painful on the person? Do you think it actually hurts?
I think it's more mental. I think it's more of like the more you want when it comes to the dark side. I think just from playing the games and all that stuff, especially Knights of the Old Republic, you want the power, you want all this stuff, and I think we're gonna go into that little conversation with Padme and Anakin after this scene, where it's just like, I think the best way I can say it is, you want the dark side for the things you most desire, but at a point, at what cost does it? At what point do you realize like it cost me everything that I know just to get what I want, and I never realized how much of a toll it can take.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
Like,
probably
I
go
think,
with the
yeah. I
mental
just
side of it
hate
too.
to cut you off, Mike. I just want to end it on this. Is pretty much those who like Anakin in the sense who are kind-hearted, good in nature. This is going to be more painful for just people who truly embraced the Sith way, the dark side, who just had hate their entire lives. Like Darth Maul, once we get into him, you're going to understand, if you're born into hate, it's going to be easy for you to embrace the dark side. But if you're good in nature, kind hearted, like Anakin is, everything's just nothing but pain and suffering. And I think we've heard that from Yoda from episode 1, The Phantom Menace, where he talks about, you know, or we might have heard it from someone else, I believe, later down the road, but that's where it's going to lead. So that being said, continue, Mike.
Yeah, no, I probably would just say it's definitely more from the physical standpoint or mental standpoint with the whole turning to the dark side. It's just really, one of the things that as a Jedi, you can't have attachments. And, Anakin having the attachment with his mother, obviously he couldn't let it go over the 10-year period. And that just was the start down the dark path. And just once she died and you can't, it's hard to let go for him, but it just really had that effect and just completely it's just a complete 180, just embrace the killer that he is in the inside, and he murdered everybody, and just it really took an emotional mental toll for that.
Yeah, and then we get the conversation between him and Padme, where one, he says he didn't just kill the men, he killed the women, the children. He also refers to them as not even being, even they're animals, he calls them. They're just, which eventually we might learn that they're not, and that they are a little bit more, just people in a sense, just a different type of species. But we also get a very jarring line from him. It's all Obi-Wan's fault. He's jealous. He is holding me back. And it's said in rage and anger. And I gotta say, this whole conversation, major red flags if I'm Padme, but she doesn't seem to really mind. She's like, "Oh, you're just a person. You're allowed to be upset."
I would
And
be
he
angry.
even knows.
Yeah.
He's like, "I'm a Jedi." He's like, "I'm not supposed to." And she's just like, "Oh, it's okay." And it's like, he just,
I mean, if I
it
was
seemed very out of character.
I mean, I'm not trying to
Padme,
make a joke of this whole conversation, but if I'm Padme, I'm like you said, Ryan, all red flags. But I'm like, it's not the fact that he slaughtered a man, women, and children, or the fact that he treats them like animals. I think my biggest red flag is when he threw that little part, he threw it like a sissy little kid. He's just like, oh. It's like that. I would have been like,
just seemed,
done.
it seems strange that Padme was just so okay with it, because especially her character, and then she was younger, but her character, not just in the last film, but even in this one, where she kind of like seems much more mature and stuff, and even discussions earlier back on Naboo, you wouldn't think she'd be okay with like what happened, but she is. And and the story moves on. um yeah, so
And there's some blue milk involved too. Fortunately, that wasn't spilled or
I did see that.
Yeah.
thrown away. Yeah, because like we didn't. Well, because I think when they first were talking about, what happened to Shmi, like when Baru was bringing out the drinks, it wasn't blue milk. It's just like, oh, I wonder if they'll have it. Then obviously Padme brings it in, so it's like, oh, that's pretty cool.
There. So with that, we get we get the little funeral. We learn that, at least Shmi seemed to be for a little bit happy with Klieg, so that's kind of nice. It doesn't seem to be something that Anakin really even pays attention to or cares about. We do then get the transmission from Obi-Wan, which gets transmitted out to Coruscant, and we get this the witness of a battle droid and an attack on him, and Mace Windu says, "Okay, stay there. We'll go help Obi-Wan." And strangely enough, Anakin's okay with it. He's like, "Yep, okay, we'll stay here." But Padme's not. And Padme goes, "You're supposed, like," first of all, she's like, "He's your friend, like, why won't we go rescue him?" And then,
like my father, it's like, well, you would want to go out and
you just slaughtered a whole family for your mother. You're not going to go try to save your father? Like, it's just, but we get this, Padme now. All the times Anakin has no problem breaking rules and ignoring the orders. At this point, he's like, yeah, it's kind of like he seemed a little defeated. Like he just kind of gave up. Like he's just, and I mean, he just went through a lot. He's definitely all over the place, but it was nice to see Padme be like, "We're going, I'm closer. We're going to go, and your job's to protect me. So protect me."
So you have to come along. Yeah.
That was it. Also, they steal C-3PO. I mean, I know he built him and all, but technically I would have assumed he got sold. Well, maybe not. I guess he was owned by, I don't know, the slaves possession.
Technically, I think after episode 1, once he left Tatooine, he gave him to his mom. Anakin gave him to help her out, and then it's pretty much like, what is Owen and Baru and Krieg gonna do with a protocol droid at the moment? Probably nothing at the moment, So it's like,
he just wanted to talk to Jawas and to talk to the moisture farming droids.
This one's got a motivator.
I'm pretty sure C-3PO speaks a couple languages.
3 million, I think, but
yep.
But with that, anything specific for this or for this part of this film, or are we ready to pitch it on over to Mike?
I just want to say this: Natalie Portman's outfit that whole white suit that she wore at the end that we watched, she was my first actual crush as a young kid watching this scene, because it was just, it's so sexy. That being said, that's all I got.
Little reminiscent of the Princess Leia white. That right there too, right? Kind of like a little shout out to that. I think they did with the costume design there.
Yeah.
But yes, who doesn't love Natalie Portman? So with that, Mike,
That's a wrap. Thank you everyone for joining Three Simple Men, making their way through that galaxy or through the galaxy. Hit that like, comment, subscribe. Come back next week for some more Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones content. May the Force be with you always.